Welcome to Watching Comics with me, Chris Otto, where I share my thoughts and opinions on comic book movies and television shows. And on this week's episode, I'll be talking about the DC animated universe. Now, the DC animated universe is actually a pretty broad topic because if you really wanted to, you could go all the way back to the Max Fleischer Superman cartoons from the 40s and claim that that's part of the DC animated universe. But the universe I'm talking about starts, at least I think it's fair to say, starts with what has become known as the Timm-Verse. And the Timm-Verse refers to the cartoons and animated films that were co-created, co-produced, and were drawn in the style of Bruce Timm, hence the name Timm-Verse. And that all got started in 1992 with Batman the Animated Series. This is a cartoon that I grew up with, and it came out, like I said, in 1992, right after Batman Returns. And it made a lot of references to Tim Burton's Batman universe. Penguin was drawn in a very similar style as the way Danny DeVito looked as the Penguin. The Joker was sometimes given a kind of sort of similar background as Jack Nicholson's Joker. I think in the cartoon they do refer to him as Jack Napier, which was Jack Nicholson's character name. They also reference the fact that the Joker was a part of organized crime before he became the Joker. And of course, it also used Danny Elfman's Batman score as the theme. But like I said, it kind of took place. It didn't so much take place in the same universe. It just, since that was what people who maybe weren't big Batman fans and the only thing they knew about Batman was from Batman and Batman Returns, it was something that, you felt like you were in the know because it's like, oh, they're referencing that use, but they didn't blatantly reference it. It was just if they were going to reference something, it was going to be from those movies. But the animated series did a lot of things to impact the comics because it was like the second or third episode that aired was the episode Heart of Ice, which is a Mr. Freeze story. Now, up until this point, Mr. Freeze was just a German guy who made ice puns, which is very much how Arnold Schwarzenegger played him in Batman and Robin. But what the creators of Batman the Animated Series decided to do, Bruce Timm and Eric Radomski, I know Paul Dini was also a writer on the show, but what they decided to do was make Mr. Freeze a more tragic character. And so the episode features Victor Freeze before he became Mr. Freeze, the villain. Victor Freeze trying to find a cure for a disease that his wife Nora has. Since his wife Nora was terminally ill, he had her cryogenically frozen. So this way he could work on finding the cure for her disease. And once he found the cure, he would unfreeze her and cure her. Unfortunately, the man who owned the company he worked for didn't appreciate that Victor Freeze was using the money that was given to him to work for this company, was using the money for his own research. So the guys sent a couple of thugs down to the lab and destroyed the place, basically trying to kill Victor Freeze, but they didn't kill him. They just made it so this way he couldn't survive outside of sub-zero temperatures. And it was such a, departure from what we'd seen, but such a serious take on a character that up until this point was very comical. The fans that were watching it, that became the accepted Mr. Freeze. We didn't want to see a guy in a German accent making snow and ice puns. We wanted to see this Mr. Freeze. I think that really helps set the tone for what the Timm-Verse was all about, because this is, even though it was a cartoon and was advertised to kids, and, there was all the action figures, which of course I had, adult fans could watch it because as an adult, I still watch Batman the Animated Series. I have it on DVD, I have the box set, and I'll every once in a while pop in a disc and watch, some of my favorite episodes. And I think that the Timm-Verse as a whole did an extremely good job at making a cartoon that kids could like, and at the same time make a show that comic book fans could like. And that's why so many things that happened in Batman the Animated Series impacted the comics. Because another big thing, probably the biggest thing to come from Batman the Animated Series, is the character of Harley Quinn. She did not exist in the comics until Batman the Animated Series. The episode she first showed up in was, I believe, the second Joker episode, entitled Joker's Favor. A guy who's having a terrible day is driving home, and some jerk cuts him off on the freeway, so he gets up alongside the guy and starts basically the kid version of telling him to go fuck himself, and realizes he just told the Joker to go fuck himself. The guy kind of panics after that and backs away from the Joker, but then the Joker starts following the guy, and the guy tries to drive through this winding road through the woods, and the Joker is following him, and the guy gets so panicked he crashes his car. Joker finds him after he's crashed his car, talks to him and says, "Oh, you're gonna owe me a favor." The guy's like, "Well, what's the favor?" And Joker's like, "I don't know, I haven't thought of it yet." So he takes the guy's license so that he would know where he is. 5 years later, the guy is in a different state with his family under a different name, and the Joker calls him looking to cash in on the favor. So the guy has to come back to Gotham City to help Joker with his plan, which is a plan that I think really epitomizes who the Joker is. Commissioner Gordon was being honored at a dinner, and Joker felt that since he's a criminal and is the reason that Commissioner Gordon even has a job, he should have been invited. And since he wasn't, he decided he was going to crash the party and then try and kill everyone. I believe part of the reason Harley Quinn was created was because I think they needed someone. The idea was to have the Joker come out of a cake or something, like a giant cake, but they thought it would be too weird to have Joker as a male character trying to do something sexy like that. So they decided they needed a female clown character and created Harley Quinn. And again, the comic book fans loved her so much in the one episode that they added her to the comics. And now Harley Quinn is one of the most popular comic book characters, and that's all because of the animated series. Another thing about Harley Quinn, obviously she was paired up with the Joker, and the story was that she was the Joker's girlfriend, but obviously Joker is all about himself, very narcissistic, and was very abusive towards her. And there was one episode where Harley gets fed up and leaves him, and she ends up hanging out with Poison Ivy. And nowadays, honestly, I think people prefer Harley and Ivy as a couple more than Harley and the Joker, because like I said, Harley and the Joker, that's an abusive relationship. People don't want to see that. What's so great about Harley and Ivy is that they're such an odd couple, because Harley is so childish and, still has a thing for the Joker, and is really just, for me, it's Harley is just looking for affection from anyone. And Ivy, I think, as much as she's, all for saving plants and, nature and things like that, she's kind of a feminist. Not so much feminist, more like just man-hating. Just she thinks men are worthless, except for when she's, using her mind control toxins to make them do her work for her. So to see Harley Quinn obsessed with a man, I think really aggravates Poison Ivy, and she kind of wants to protect Harley from the Joker. And I think that's another thing that makes them as a couple so entertaining to fans, because you have, I'm pretty sure it's that episode at the end, Harley is mad, she's, throwing a fit or whatever, and then she sees something from the Joker, and she falls in love with him again. Or that might be an episode later on when they decided to give Harley Quinn an origin, Mad Love. Yes, that's the episode. She's mad, she's cursing out the Joker, and then she finds a love note from him. And then she's like, "Oh, my angel, So Batman, the animated series, ran from 92 to 95 and then returned as the new Batman Adventures in 1997. All the characters were redesigned, given a more streamlined look, and in the new Batman Adventures, they used a new Robin because in Batman the Animated Series, Dick Grayson was Robin, but they made Robin older. He was in college, which allowed them to not have to always use Robin. You know, Robin was an adult. He was out on his own at that point. So anytime Robin didn't show up, it was just explained he was at college. In the new Batman Adventures, Dick Grayson was now Nightwing, and they used Tim Drake as Robin, who had some Jason Todd qualities, but they gave him the name Tim Drake probably because no one liked Jason Todd, and that was why it was voted to have him killed in the first place. They also used Batgirl more often. Batgirl, Barbara Gordon, was introduced in the animated series, but then they redesigned her and used her more often. And Batgirl was actually a major part in an episode of the new Batman Adventures called Over the Edge, which is, in most people's opinion, one of the best episodes of the animated series. That featured, it started off with Commissioner Gordon leading a raid on Wayne Manor and going into the Batcave, chasing Batman and Robin out of the Batcave. Batman and Robin get in the Batboat. Alfred interferes and helps Batman and Robin escape. So they get in the Batboat and they're riding away. But then police boats start chasing them. And as the police boats are gaining on them, all of a sudden the police boats get shot at, and it's actually Nightwing shows up on a jet ski to help Batman escape in the Batboat. So Nightwing, Batman, and Robin escape, and Nightwing is like, what the hell happened? And Batman tells the story that what happened was they were chasing Scarecrow. Scarecrow got away while Batman and Robin were fighting his henchmen. So Batgirl went after Scarecrow. They fight on the roof, and Scarecrow hits her, causing Batgirl to fall off of the building and land on the squad car being driven by her father, Commissioner Gordon. So she lands on the car and falls to the street. And Commissioner Gordon is like, holy shit, Batgirl is going to die, call an ambulance. And then Batgirl all of a sudden just goes, you know, she calls out, she says, Dad. And Gordon is like, what? And takes off her mask and sees that it's his daughter, Barbara. So then Batman comes down and Barbara dies. And Commissioner Gordon is like, how could you not tell me? And Batman is like, well, it wasn't my place to tell you. You know, it would be her choice to tell you. So then Bullock tries to arrest Batman. Batman escapes, is at Wayne Manor. Commissioner Gordon calls him and is like, yeah, just, 5 minutes on Barbara's computer and I know everything. I know that you're Batman. I'm coming to get you. And that brings us to where we are now in the episode. Batman, Robin, and Nightwing on the run. Nightwing, believing his cover of Dick Grayson being safe, decides to return to his loft where he finds Officer Montoya and other police officers ambushing him. I forget what eventually happens to Robin, but I know that Commissioner Gordon sets Bane after Batman, and Bane and Batman are fighting on the roof of police headquarters. At this point, Batman realizes he has nothing to lose and does try to kill Bane by throwing Bane into the bat signal, which electrocutes him, but I think doesn't kill Bane because Commissioner Gordon is knocked over the ledge on the roof, and Batman is trying to save him, even though Commissioner Gordon hates Batman now. As Bane is dying, the last thing he does is throw the bat signal at Batman and Commissioner Gordon, and it hits them, causing them to fall off. And as Batman, Commissioner Gordon, and the bat signal are falling off the roof, you hear Barbara Gordon go like, no, no, and you realize it was actually a fear toxin induced dream where all of that would happen because she felt guilty that she hasn't told her dad, Commissioner Gordon, that she's Batgirl. So then at the end of the episode, you see Barbara and her father, Jim Gordon, talking over dinner. And Barbara's like, listen, I need to tell you something. And as she's about to tell him, he says, I forget what exactly he says, but he pretty much says, whatever you want to tell me, it's okay. It's your decision or whatever, and like winks at her. So it's like he knows she's Batgirl. I mean, how many? It's kind of hard for her to hide the fact that she's Batgirl from him. I don't know. I like to think. I know it's kind of ambiguous in the episode, but I like to think that Commissioner Gordon knows his daughter is Batgirl, and he knows that even if he tells her, "I don't want you to be Batgirl," she's gonna be Batgirl anyway. Of course, I can't forget to mention the spin-off film Batman: Mask of the Phantasm, which, in a lot of people's opinion, is the greatest Batman film ever made. It's hard to compare a cartoon to live action films, but Mask of the Phantasm is definitely the best animated film in the DC animated universe and is definitely up there, in my opinion, in best Batman films and comic book films. And a major part of what makes Mask of the Phantasm so good is Mark Hamill's Joker. It's hard to top what Mark Hamill did with that character. It's great what he did with that character, and it really set off his career as a voice actor, a successful voice actor, because look at how many times he's voiced the Joker. Even in the Batman Arkham games, he was the Joker. So that's a major reason why I think people think Mask of the Phantasm is so good. After the animated series, which, like I said, it ended in 95. In 96, Bruce Timm co-created Superman, the animated series, which I don't remember a lot of. The only episode I can really remember was that Superman and the Flash had a race. But what I do remember is the night it debuted. It premiered in prime time on WB, and it was a 3-part episode. So an hour and a half of prime time was given to a Superman cartoon. I think that really shows that's how good Bruce Timm's animated universe is. That they were willing to premiere a children's cartoon in prime time on the WB. Like I said, hour and a half episode, because it's a 3-part episode. So an hour and a half in prime time. That shows a lot of faith in what Bruce Timm was doing and his whole team was doing. And I think it's rightfully so. I think the entire Timm-Verse was very well done. Then, like I said, that was 96. 97, Batman the Animated Series returned as the New Batman Adventures, which I think was done probably because Batman started showing up in Superman the Animated Series. I know they did some crossover episodes, and then there was also the Superman Batman Adventure Hour or something, which was a Superman episode, then a Batman episode, and that might have been when they did a crossover. There was also the short-lived Static Shock in 2000 that featured Batman, but before that was Batman Beyond. Now, when Batman Beyond first came out, I think I was getting to a point where I was kind of like, oh, I'm too old to watch cartoons now. But at the same time, I think it was also, why is this new guy Batman? I don't want to see this new young guy as Batman. I want to see Bruce Wayne as Batman. What I didn't know, since I never gave the show a chance, was that Bruce Wayne was a character in the show. Animated series Bruce Wayne was a character in the show, because the show starts with that Bruce Wayne as an old Batman. He's in the Batman Beyond suit, so it doesn't have a cape. He can fly. He has the stealth mode, all those types of gadgets. He's like doing a raid or something and is taken down by one of the guys that he's trying to take down. And he resorts to pulling a gun on the guy. There was a gun laying on the ground from one of the criminals that he was trying to take down. And he takes a gun and points it at the guy. And the guy was like, whoa, don't kill me. It seemed like when Batman realized that if he has to pull a gun on a criminal to stop him, that means he needs to retire. Somehow Terry McGinnis ends up at Wayne Manor in the Batcave and becomes the new Batman. But yeah, I found Batman Beyond on Netflix, and that was how I watched it, and I really enjoyed it. It was a really good cartoon, because like I said, you get to see the old Bruce Wayne. because mentally he's still Batman. It's just physically he can't be Batman anymore. And there was a great episode that I'd love to see this kind of idea in a movie. Someone was getting prominent citizens of Gotham City to go crazy because he was implanting speakers and making people think they were hearing their own voice in their head. So Bruce Wayne is like in a hospital and all of a sudden starts hearing this voice like, oh, Bruce, do this, Bruce, do that. And Bruce is like, well, I know since he's been working with Batman to solve this case, he knows what's really going on. So then at the end of the episode, Terry McGinnis, the current Batman, says to Bruce, how did you know it wasn't the voice in your head? And Bruce goes, well, first of all, I know I'm not crazy. And second of all, up here, pointing to his head, up here, I'm not Bruce Wayne. And that really drove home the idea that mentally he's still Batman. The only reason he's not Batman anymore is because he physically can't do it. But mentally, he's still just as much of Batman as he ever was. And I think that's a really cool idea that in his head, he refers to himself as Batman. Mixing that with something else that I was told came from the comics. I don't think I ever read it, but I heard about it. Like at some point in the comics, I think it was the Teen Titans knew that the Justice League was having a meeting, like could see through the window they were having a meeting, but couldn't hear what they were saying. So the Teen Titans were like using binoculars to look into the window of where the Justice League was meeting. And Robin says, give me the binoculars. Batman taught me how to read lips. And he picks up the binoculars, looks at the meeting, and puts down the binoculars. And then the other members of the Teen Titans are like, oh, what are they saying? What did Batman say? Because they could see Batman was talking. They're like, what was Batman saying? Robin is like, Batman said, put down the binoculars. And I would love this idea of like, no one knows Batman's secret identity. So they try to get like a mind reader or like a hero with like a hero or villain with telepathy to try and read his mind to see, oh, well, let's see who he refers to himself as, and then have them like, he calls himself Batman. I don't know. I would totally get a kick out of seeing something like that. Yeah, then Batman Beyond also had a spin-off, Return of the Joker, which is an excellent film. Again, Mark Hamill giving a great performance as the Joker. And one of the best parts of this film is a flashback to Batman and Batgirl looking for Robin. And then it's revealed that Robin, Tim Drake, was kidnapped by the Joker. And the Joker reveals that he did all sorts of experiments and things on Tim Drake to turn him into like a little Joker. And it gets Batman so mad that he actually, like, Batman had pulled out a knife to cut himself free when he got tied up by the Joker, that he actually throws the knife at the Joker, attempts to kill the Joker for what he's done to Tim Drake. And it's a great scene. And then at some point then, Joker is revealing that he knows that Batman is Bruce Wayne. And Joker gives this great line, it'd be funny if it wasn't so pathetic. Ah, what the hell, I'll laugh anyway. And starts laughing, and then Batman like jumps through the window and is like threatening to kill the Joker. But then Tim Drake, even though he's Jokerized, has enough of what's going on in his head to kill the Joker. Because the weapon that the Joker kept using was a gun that you would shoot it and a bang flag would come out. And then he'd pull the trigger again, and then the bang flag would fire from the gun like a harpoon. So Joker's trying to get Tim Drake, to use it on Batman, and instead he shoots Joker with it. And Joker's last line is, well, that's not funny. But then the rest of the plot is that the Joker has come back, and it's actually the Joker. And of course, it turns out that adult Tim Drake is still under that influence of what Joker did to him as a child. And then finally we come to what was basically the end of the Timm-Verse, the Justice League cartoon that premiered in 2001. And the first 2 seasons, I think, were just Justice League. And it was an hour because it would be 2 half-hour episodes, so an hour for Justice League. After that, they made it Justice League Unlimited, which used a whole bunch more of Justice League members. So the Justice League at first was just Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Jon Stewart, Wally West as the Flash, Martian Manhunter, and Hawkgirl. The reason Hawkgirl instead of Aquaman was because they wanted another woman on the team. And they also used Jon Stewart because they wanted, they liked the idea that it added diversity having an African American on the team, but they also liked that Jon Stewart had a more abrasive personality, which added to some of the drama in the early episodes. But yeah, so there was those first 2 seasons was just Justice League about those 7 members of the Justice League. There was also lots of hints given, even right in the first episode, that Batman kinda sorta had feelings for Wonder Woman. And then eventually down the line, Wonder Woman had feelings for Batman. And I know in an interview or a commentary, Bruce Timm addressed that, saying that normally in the comic book world, Superman and Wonder Woman are paired up. There's even an ongoing series right now, Superman and Wonder Woman. And a lot of comic book fans were mad that they were pairing Wonder Woman up with Batman. And I know Bruce Timm said, I believe he said something along the lines of, well, since Superman in Superman the Animated Series had Lois Lane, they didn't think it would be in Superman's character, it wouldn't be in his nature to be like, oh, I have Lois Lane and now I'm going to go after Wonder Woman. So that was why they paired up Batman and Wonder Woman, which made for some interesting exchanges between some of the characters. Something I thought was interesting throughout those first 2 seasons was that, 4 of the members of the Justice League didn't have a secret identity. Wonder Woman, Jon Stewart, Hawkgirl, and Martian Manhunter. Superman, Batman, and the Flash had secret identities, and no one on the League knew their identities. And since no one knew the identities, they weren't willing to share their identities, which made for an interesting episode during those first 2 seasons where Wonder Woman, as Diana, is out on the town or at some party, and Bruce Wayne is there and dances with Wonder Woman. But then something happens, and Wonder Woman starts fighting, and I think Batman might have showed up. And at this point, Wonder Woman knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman. So later in the episode, Wonder Woman says to Batman, oh, you still owe me a dance. And Batman looks at her and just says, I have no idea what you're talking about. And swings away or something, I don't know. So I thought it was interesting how they didn't know their identities, but then at the end of the second season, I forget what the storyline exactly was. I think it had to do with, yes, it was Thanagarians were coming to attack Earth. And since they were controlling the Earth and were against the Justice League, Batman decided they couldn't go out as the Justice League. They needed to go as who they really are, which meant revealing Batman, Superman, and Flash's identities to each other and to the other 4 members of the League. And they're hiding in a store or a restaurant, and Wally West, the Flash, says, I don't know, I'm not too comfortable with revealing my identity to you guys. And before he's even finished talking, Batman just goes, Wally West, Clark Kent, and then takes off his mask and says, Bruce Wayne. And I love that Batman knows everyone's secret identity, but because that's what he does. He's a detective. He knows these things. And then after that, it became Justice League Unlimited, where they added a bunch of heroes. So episodes now, instead of being 2-parters, they were all just 30-minute episodes that would deal with different members of the League. So you might get an episode that focuses more on, I know early on they focused on Green Arrow, and part of the reason Green Arrow stays with the Justice League is because he catches a glimpse of Black Canary, Dina Lance. They introduce the Huntress and the Question and actually make them a couple. There's a good episode, it might be called something like Double Date, where Question and Huntress team up with Green Arrow and Black Canary to take on, something. I don't know what they were doing. And I know there's a great exchange between Huntress and Question. Huntress is trying to flirt with Question, and she says something like, "Ooh, what are you wearing?" And then he's like, "Blue trench coat and fedora." And she's like, "You're no fun at this." Justice League Unlimited really made me a fan of the Question. And I think at that point, the Question wasn't really kind of like that. They kind of changed some of his personality, I think, because he also has a classic line. He's being interrogated. They probably say a typical line, "Tell us what you know." And Question tells them, "The little plastic pieces on the end of your shoelaces are called aglets. Their true purpose is sinister." And I liked that he was like this conspiracy theorist in the show. And I liked that everything in the world was part of a conspiracy. So I liked that. I know there was also a great episode. The 7 members of the Justice League are fighting some huge battle, and Batman delegates Booster Gold to crowd control. But then something horrible happens, and Booster Gold has to take care of this horrible thing. Throughout the episode, characters keep thinking Booster Gold is Green Lantern. He does something that saves the universe. And then at the very end of the episode, Batman is mad that he hasn't been on crowd control. So it was funny to see, a minor character get the spotlight. I know Orion was also a character that showed up quite a few times. I think Red Tornado was on a few episodes. And then I know the very last episode of Justice League Unlimited, the last shot is 40 members of the Justice League flying across the screen, which, it's pretty badass seeing all the characters fly across the screen like that. Justice League also did a lot to unite a lot of villains. There's a great episode where Lex Luthor teams up with, I think, Cheetah, Ultra Humanite, who else? I feel like there's someone, Solomon Grundy, and then the Joker shows up. And that's a good episode. I think that was a 2-part episode. Again, Mark Hamill as the Joker. It was fantastic. And it was great seeing Joker interact with Lex Luthor. That provided some humor in that episode. One of the things that really helped the continuity of the Timm-Verse was the use of the same voice actors over and over again. And of course, really, I think the backbone of all the voice actors who has voiced the same character a million times, Kevin Conroy as Batman. Got the job as Batman in 1992 and hasn't stopped since. Anytime you need someone to voice Batman, they've been using Kevin Conroy. Although now in the animated universe, they are using Jason O'Mara, and he's great, since it's a different direction that they've gone with the character. But Kevin Conroy, when I read a comic, it's those voice actors from the Justice League cartoon and Superman the Animated Series and Batman the Animated Series. It's those voices I hear when I read the comics, because I think watching those shows growing up, it kind of shaped what I believed, the comic book characters should be represented as. And I think they were a very fair representation of the characters because comic book fans loved these shows. I went from the cartoons and then becoming a fan of the comics, but there are people, fans of the comics, that can watch the cartoons and appreciate what the cartoons do, for the characters. Like I said, it's the Timm-Verse that shaped what I expect out of comic book characters because, like I said, the Timm-Verse as a whole did a very good job of being for kids and adult fans at the same time. But eventually, DC became not so good at that anymore, which I'll discuss next week. So that just about wraps it up here. If you think my opinions are wrong and absurd and completely stupid, let me know. Facebook.com/WatchingComicsNY or on Twitter @watching_comics. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.